welcome to another episode of Tales with Tosinger. You can see I'm outdoors today, and you can see the lovely background. There's water. Can you see the 3 turtles over there? Can you zoom to them? That's awesome. You know the tortoise is always in my stories, but today we have the turtle, which is the tortoise that lives in water, basically. But that doesn't matter. Let's go right into the story. And the title of today's story is The Tortoise and the Hippopotamus. When I was young, we used to sing this song in elementary school because hippopotamus is such a long word and it's always difficult to spell. And when something is difficult to spell, or when you can't pronounce something, or when you want to remember something, you always put it in a song. And that makes you, of course, remember it better. So the song goes this way, and like I said, the song helps us to spell the word hippopotamus. Do you know what a hippopotamus is? It's actually an animal that lives in water, and today's story is about him and the tortoise. It goes like this: H-I-P for the hip, for the hippopo, P-O-P-O for the hippopo, and T-A-M-U-S for the hippopotamus. Hippopotamus! Isn't that such a cute song? I'm going to put the words on the screen so you can follow me. I'll sing it one more time. H-I-P for the hip, for the hippopo, P-O-P-O for the hippopo, and T-A-M-U-S for the hippopotamus. Hippopotamus! That was awesome. Let's get into today's story. Welcome once again to Tales with Tosinger. The title of today's story is The Tortoise and the Hippopotamus. Story. Allo. Once upon a time. Once upon a time. Awesome. Once upon a time, there lived a tortoise and a hippopotamus. And hippopotamus was the king of the village. He was so proud. He had 7 wives. Can you imagine 7 wives? That is a lot to handle. You must agree. So hippopotamus had 7 wives, and every weekend he throws a feast for all the animals of the village. And hippopotamus' name was Insaratin, King Insaratin. Only the 7 wives knew what the king's real name was. No one else knew what the king's real name was. So on this day, everybody comes to dinner, they sit down, but guess what? Only the people who knew the king's name actually could eat. So Tortoise came to one of the feasts and was about to sit down. The king was like, no, you can't just sit down and eat. Do you know my name? He said, no. He said, no, you cannot eat unless you know my name. He was like, oh, nobody knows your name. I mean, how's this? But you know, Tortoise is always very clever anyway. So he promised the king, he said, you know what? I'm going to find out what your name is. But he didn't tell them how. And the hippopotamus said, you're going to find out what my name is? If you do, you know what? My wives and I will live in the water forever. That is going to be our punishment. You know, he actually punished himself before knowing if the tortoise was going to fulfill his promise or not. That was very, very risky of the king to do, you would agree. But anyway, let's move on with the story. The tortoise drew up a plan of how he was going to get what the king's name was. So on this fateful day, he dug a path on the way to where the king and his 7 wives usually go to the river, like this, to take a bath. He dug a pit and put himself, you know, he's kind of rounded on top with a hard shell. So he placed himself in a rounded, dug up hole on the path to the river where the king and his wives go to take a bath. So on this fateful morning, he went early before everyone woke up and hid himself in that hole. And as the king and the 7 wives were joyfully going to have their bath the next morning, one of the 2 wives went ahead and 5 were behind the king, Hippopotamus. And then one of the wives just tripped over what seemed to be like a stone, but it was actually the tortoise shell showing a little bit on the path. You know, he buried himself. So the wife tripped and said, oh my God, it's Saratin. The Saracen king! I hurt my foot! Help! Help, the Saracen! And the king was like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? I'll get you. Sorry, my darling. Sorry, my darling. And that's how the tortoise got the name. And he was so happy. So they had their bath and went back home. The upper weekend came for the feast. And then Tortoise went feeling so proud of himself and arrogant because he already knew the answer. And he got to the feast and he was like, yes, I'm ready to eat. The king was like, you are ready to eat? Do you know my name? He said, yes, I know your name. Your name is King Saracen. And everybody was like, whoa, give it up for Tortoise. Oh my God. Hippopotamus was like, how come? But he had to fulfill his promise. So he and his 7 wives went to the river because a promise is a debt, you know. Went to the river and just went down into the river and lived there. I don't know if I should say happily ever after, but they lived underwater and only come out at night to eat. That is why till today, the hippopotamus always lives underwater. The hippopotamus became a water animal. And that's the end of today's story. I hope you enjoyed it. I know you learned a lesson or two, one of which was a promise is a debt. It's nice that the king fulfilled his promise. And of course, you always know Tortoise is clever. So I don't know what lesson. If you learned any other lesson apart from that, drop it in the comments. Thank you for listening. Give this video a thumbs up, share with your friends, and thanks for joining me on this episode of Tales with Tosinger. Bye! Mwah.